You have multiple Proxmox nodes, clusters, PBS box off to the side, maybe a nested lab or two, and about 47 browser tabs open that just keep an eye on everything. Well, Proxmox just shipped something that might finally replace all that chaos with a real single pane of glass. Let's talk about Proxmox Datacenter Manager 1, what's new in the stable release, and what that actually means for Homelab. Also, really quick, about 90% of the people watching this aren't subscribed, so if you like deep dives into Proxmox, ZFS, different tools that make your life easier, do me a favor, hit subscribe and hit the like button. Also, thank you very much. We finally hit 4,000 subscribers right before the end of 2025. Howdy folks, I'm Zach Perry, back here with 45 Homelab. We've looked at Proxmox Datacenter Manager back in the alpha and the beta days, actually about 2 months ago for the beta, when it was still bare bones, but building with each iteration. Well, as of December 4th, 2025, Proxmox Datacenter Manager 1.0 is out as stable, fully supported product. So in this video, we are gonna go and walk through a couple of things. So what Proxmox Datacenter Manager actually is, very important question for those who don't know, the big highlights in the 1.0 stable release, why this matters a lot if you're running more than one Proxmox box in your home lab, a walkthrough of the install process, so going from the actual setting up the VM to the process, very similar if you've done an install before, and the roadmap that the PDM Proxmox Datacenter Manager has. What is Proxmox Datacenter Manager? Think of it as and I'm gonna call it PDM from now on, just to kind of save me going over it over and over again, but it's kind of the central nervous system to your Proxmox ecosystem. So instead of logging into each separate PVE node, keeping separate tabs of your PVE clusters and PBS servers, Proxmox Backup Server, managing updates, migrations, metrics in 10 different places. Now I know there are a ton of tools that can facilitate this, Devolution's RDM, RoyaltyS, mRemote NG, and a slew of others. Use them all, they're all great, but it's good to have something right from the Proxmox devs that its sole purpose is everything Proxmox related. And you get one UI, one web UI that connects multiple Proxmox routes, so PVE, PVS instances, and more, aggregates inventory and metrics across all of them, lets you do basic lifecycle operations, and even cross-cluster live migrations from a single place, which is a huge quality of life update. Officially, it's designed for large distributed environments, multi-site, multi-cluster, data center type sort of setups. But the features that it has and that they map up nicely with a Homelab setup that has, a main HL15B or HL15 2.0. Or even a couple of them making a Proxmox cluster, or a few, let's say, HL8s, anything like that. And you can have a dedicated Proxmox Backup Server box integrated into that, and all that can now be treated as one logical data center from the PDM UI. Now, what's new and important in the 1.0 stable release? So some of those key platform details, the base OS, Debian 13.2 Trixie, kernel 16.17.2-2 as a stable default, ZFS 2.3 doesn't really have much of a place in this besides if you use ZFS for your boot drives, the stack, core services plus web UI written in Rust with Rust/U WebAssembly UI for responsiveness and security. And from the datasheet and the press release, which we'll link down below, the big enterprising themes are simplified management, enhanced visibility, improved efficiency, and future-proof open source stack for scaling Proxmox environments. So what I mean in plain terms when I say that, this is one of the bigger things that Proxmox has been lacking compared to ESXi and vCenter, and it's great to kind of see this finally get released into stable. Now let's go and dive into the features. So let's break down the features that actually matter when you're the person that has to get up and fix things at 3 a.m. So you have that centralized overview and metrics aggregation from a single dashboard. You can see the global health of all of your connected nodes, that being cluster or single servers, Proxmox Backup Server instances. So pretty much everything right now except for the mail gateway, which is in the roadmap. But you can get an aggregate of your CPU, RAM, storage I/O, VM, container counts and status. Benefit from local caching, so if a remote briefly drops, you still see the last known state instead of, an empty dashboard. So for Homelab, this is huge if you've got one cluster or one node doing serious stuff, so storage, VM, services, your main bread and butter. Another smaller node for doing experiments or nested labs, let's say. PBS box sitting somewhere quietly, maybe remote, maybe local, quietly logging backups instead of, okay, which node is being loud right now? Now you get a single view of the entire mess, or at least mess when it comes to my Homelab environment. Now, you also have RBAC or role-based access control, so it lets you build custom dashboards that are filtered by specific remotes. For example, production node, production cluster, resource type, so nodes, VMs, containers, SDN, PBS data stores, operational tags like critical, testing, GPU, home automation. And these views tie into the native RBAC available on PDM, and you give someone access to a view of test VMs without giving them rights to the actual host itself. So that is great for things like, your multi-user Homelab households. Let's say somebody's getting into home labbing, you don't want to give them full access. Lab environments where you want to give friends or coworkers, playground to play around in. Separating production-ish sort of things from, please break this, test it out, and you don't get those things mixed up like I have. Multi-cluster, multi-management, and management cross-cluster live migration. So this is kind of a really fun one. So PDM can manage independent clusters and standalone nodes as equals, allows live migration of VMs between clusters, not just between nodes in the same cluster. And the last part is a big deal. So traditionally, cross-platform cluster moves meant backup, restore, or some manual QM or PCT sort of shuffle in the mix. And now you get a built-in workflow for moving a VM from between separate clusters, which is amazing for doing maintenance on one node or one cluster, keep those services running, slowly retiring old hardware, moving to a newer HL15, and shuffling that noisy workloads for lab clusters or any kind of labbing during testing. Now, it's not magic, still needs reasonable networking, storage setup, but PDM dramatically reduces that operational pain of migration between cluster. Next, we have lifecycle operations, logs, centralized updates. Now, PDM isn't trying to replace the full Proxmox VE UI, but it does give you a lot of the daily driver stuff from one place. It gives you the ability to start, stop, reboot VMs, containers across all of your infrastructure, do basic configuration edits, view and search centralized task history and logs across remotes. Super useful for audits and troubleshooting. Now, you also get a central update management panel, and we're going to go through all this and kind of show it off shortly. You can see what updates are available across all of the connected PVE and PBS systems. Push updates from one interface will actually bring you to the node itself, but you can access it from PDM. Open SSH shells to your remotes directly from that PDM console. And for a Homelab running multiple Proxmox nodes, no more, okay, which node did I forget to update? Of course, there are other ways to do that, but it's great to have it, Proxmox central, but it also gives you easier patching without having, manually log into each system. And there's also powerful search and query language. Now, not important for a ton of people, but the search bar in PDM just isn't a search up the VM name, blah, blah, blah. It's closer to a mini query language inspired by tools like Elasticsearch, GitHub Search. You can filter by resource type, VM, container, remote, status, running, status, stopped, rebooted. Tags like backup, test, GPU, Homelab, prod. And in a bigger Homelab with dozens or hundreds of VMs, that can really make the difference between clicking through a tree to see what's there and going forever, or typing, type VM tag, home assistance, status, running, and immediately finding the exact thing you're looking for. Now, I have a bad time removing a lot of things from my Proxmox instance, so I am drastically approaching that sort of thing where it's becoming very unwieldy. But yeah, it'll be a great thing for me going in the future and a lot of people as well. All right, now let's jump into the networking and how that's kind of handled in PDM. So you have centralized SDN or EVPN, and if you're playing around with Proxmox SDN, so VXLAN, EVPN, routed fabric, you now have a central zone for kind of doing all of that stuff. And you can push those configurations across multiple remotes from a single interface. Even for a Homelab, this matters if you're doing, multi-site networking, home to office, or Homelab to colo, isolated VLAN, VRF setups for IoT, cameras, labs, all that good stuff, keeping things secure and separated. It keeps your network topology from basically turning into that one napkin diagram that you lost 6 months ago. Now, what does this actually mean for a Homelab? Now let's bring this back down to earth. I know a lot of this sounds kind of enterprise, so on, but you run a separate Proxmox Backup Server or PBS VM. You've got a mix of critical services, DNS, Home Assistant, different backups, Frigate, and more. So in that setup, PDM gives you a single pane of glass to kind of see what's running where, which nodes are hot, which ones are eating up a lot of resources, which stored pools are filling up, and it just gives you easier maintenance windows for things like migrating VMs between clusters or nodes, roll updates across your Proxmox fleet, a cleaner mental model, so things like, let's say instead of thinking in terms of random nodes, you can think in terms of, let's say, you have your core HL15 cluster, you have a test cluster, you have your backup infrastructure over here, and just anything really that you have that is Proxmox related. And if you only got one Proxmox node and a couple of VMs, PDM is probably overkill right now, but as soon as you start adding, more resources, more nodes, more infrastructure that's in that Proxmox ecosystem, it is great to have. So high availability, backup servers, nested test environment, which I have a few of, and is why I use PDM quite a bit. And this becomes a thing that, keeps the whole setup sane. All right, so now let's actually go through and all the stuff that I've talked about so far and what's available, let's see what it actually looks like. So let's go through the simple setup here. So if you've set it up Proxmox before, PBS, nested Proxmox, it's the exact same process, which I appreciate from the devs there. So let's go through. I have a PDM set up here. So we have everything here, 2 gigs. We kept it pretty low stakes here. There isn't too much to it. 2 gigs of RAM, 1 socket, 4 cores. I did add a few hard drives there. I added 3 apparently. I thought I only added 2 just so we can do ZFS, and then 1 network. So let's actually jump in, go here, and let's see our disks. So we have 1 shown there right now. And let's do a quick stop. Mind you, better thing to do is shut down, but this is a lot quicker and it's not gonna be something persistent. So let's start that up. It'll pick up those new disks. And we gotta go through the whole process here. So yeah, we'll see install Proxmox Datacenter. We want the graphical interface and it'll do its initial setup here. Oh, we got a connection timed out, but doesn't look like it affected us, so that's good. We'll just run with it. And then it'll go through all its stuff here. All right, so now we're at the Datacenter Manager installer. So for anybody who has done a Proxmox install, this is all gonna be very, very familiar to you. And we have our disks here. We can see the 3 of them. So you could just do your basic next, 1 disk, but let's do a ZFS. We'll do a RAID 1, mirror those disks, and we'll select do not use, so we only want 2 of them. We could do a 3-way mirror, but let's hold off. So there, next, Canada, we'll keep this as is, password, let's see, there. And the old classic, because it won't let you go through unless you put one in here, so we'll do mail example.local, PV home, we'll call this PDM home, so Proxmox Datacenter Manager, picks up our NIC, picks up a system over our, picks up an interface is what I'm trying to say there. I don't know why I paused on that so much, but what we can do here is, this one's interesting, and I've only done the in-place upgrades for Proxmox PBS 4 and Proxmox 9. I don't know if this is a new feature in all of them, but pinning the network interface names is interesting. I do appreciate that, but then we just basically get our whole thing here, automatically reboot, and install. And now through the power of editing, we'll jump forward so you don't have to watch this install so much.
Professor, I would trust Hagrid with my life.
Actually, no, we're not gonna edit it. We're just gonna make you suffer. All right, so we are in PDM now. As we can see, picked up our 2.57 IP slightly differs. It's gonna be 8443 instead of 8007 for PBS or 8006 for Proxmox itself. Let's go to that now. So I actually have a few of these up right now. I have a bunch of stuff up actually, but we'll go here. And this is the one I actually have been testing out with prior. So what we can do actually, we'll just move over to this because this one has a few things already. It's already well established. And we can add our Proxmox Backup Server to it because I have not added that yet. So first thing is we'll actually go in here and we'll take a look at everything that we kind of have because it gives us a good overview since I have a few things already. So we have all of our remotes, it can reach all of them. There are 8 nodes online. One thing to note is anybody who doesn't have the subscription for PVE or PVS, you're gonna use the community edition. I didn't see that posted anywheres and I might have just not been able to find it, but you will run into some update issues because the thing with PDM, if it has the enterprise default one, if 80%, at least 80% of your nodes that you have connected don't have at least a basic subscription, you'll run into update errors and things like that. But what you can do is, and I'll just put it here. So me here typing it on my laptop when I'm using the screen recorder here, don't mind me. So cat etsy os, no, not os release, /etsy/apt sources list.d and PDM enterprise sources. So we can leave that name, change it just for the sake of clarity. But the only thing we're gonna do here, you're gonna make it look exactly like this. And I'll post that in the comments there just so you can copy and paste it if you do end up doing this yourself. But it's basically just doing PDM-no-subscription, suites Trixie, so on and so forth. But let's go back to our dashboard here and we can see no valid subscription because I am very frugal, or cheap as some people would say, not me. But we can see guess with the highest CPU usage. So this is me doing a single node Nutanix node, just trying to test things out. It's nested inside of Proxmox. It's a disaster. But yeah, that is using quite a bit. We can see some, not too much. So we can kind of scroll through, see everything there. Same thing with our nodes with the highest CPU usage. This is my actual bare metal host, Proxmox 3. These Prox 3, UM-A2, like all of these, they are a, what do you call it now? A nested Proxmox. And nodes with the highest memory usage, so Prox 3, Proxmox, again, these are all nested, so they're gonna be high. They only have like, I think, 8 gigs each, just so I can at least deploy a VM on them. Now let's go into our views here, see what we have. So we can take a look, we can copy layouts from either dashboard, we can add certain things in here, we can add a resource type. So this is where I was talking about kind of making your own custom dashboards for certain people, then using RBAC to divvy things out. So show container, we can add things there, name, and let's just see here. I've actually not done this, so this might be completely wrong, but let's take a look. So we have that, and here. So too many remote nodes. Yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier. So there we go. We can see here that they have to be under 80%, or you have to have at least 80%. So we are a little bit limited in that right now, but we can add notes here for anything we might need, configuration, so our DNS, network interfaces, all that simple stuff. This is going to be for our RBAC, API tokens, basic stuff. So certificates, our subscription that we just seen. Now let's get into administration. So if we want to see what nodes are available for updates, or at least this node, I mean, we can go to our shell here, SDN. So we can see all of our SDN interfaces here. So you can see I haven't utilized it too much, but then our EVPN, our remotes here. Now this is kind of what the part that I wanted to highlight. So let's go through and actually take a look at a remote here. So we'll add our PBS instance. Again, this is nested on my main Proxmox host, which is definitely not best practice. It's on my actual PBS instance because also not best practice. I don't have one because I am lazy. But let's actually go in here and 192.168.2.90, and it'll pick up that fingerprint automatically if it can pick it up. So here, yep. Connect certificate, and we'll give this, we'll call it PBS. This remote ID can be anything you want. User, so it is going to create a new token. It'll send that over to PBS for authentication purposes. Then we'll do our, hopefully I remember the password. And this is the realm to use, the API token name. And then we'll do next. Here it'll see if it can actually communicate with it, and we will finish here. All right, so now that we have that added, we can expand this. Let's look at PBS itself. So we have a little bit of things here. Here are the updates that I was talking about before. So if you want to actually upgrade, it's going to take you to that actual node itself. And this is, I assume, one of the things that PDM is going to, or Proxmox is going to integrate as things go on, so that it's going to be able to do it in one pane of glass instead of taking you to the instance itself. So let's log in here, boom, boom, boom. And yeah, it'll tell you here, at least it takes you right to the page. No, here, refresh. There we go, so we can see everything. Now let's go back over to PDC. For some reason I called it PDC, so Proxmox Datacenter, and then left out the manager. So it is PDM, but called it PDC for whatever reason. Now, that's a single instance Proxmox. So this one is my actual bare metal. We can kind of see swap usage a little high. Well, very, very high, but that's something I'll have to address, something that I wouldn't have seen without Proxmox Datacenter Manager, because I did not check it on my actual Proxmox node. Now, Proxmox itself, we can see all of this, we can see all of our nodes within here, but what about actual clusters? So if we have a, right here, I have a, let's see, Prox cluster. This is a nested, this is on my main bare metal Proxmox. It is a nested Proxmox Ceph cluster inside of that. So definitely not using this for any kind of performance, security, anything like that. So I just uploaded a few VMs to it, a few containers. So we have Debian on Prox1 here. You can see them all in one location. Then we also have Kaizen Linux here, and we can see our RBD storage, how much usage, everything like that. Same thing with all these. We can actually take a look here, and we can open to the web UI, take a look at that VM, what's going on with it. So let's see, memory usage, not doing great. We'll go back here, and I'm sure you can see that one was red, and this one is a bit yellow. They were kind of the same percentage, I believe. Might be just a minor thing that needs to be fixed there, or just threshold there needs to be adjusted. But we can have our config here, so we can actually take a look, see what we have without going to multiple panes of glass. Get an overview of the allocation here and everything. Now, if you do have a separate cluster actually set up and added to PDM, you can do a migrate, which is really cool. Don't have one set up, unfortunately, but this would basically be the process here. So you would have your target remote. So this is our Prox cluster, and then we would send it to, let's say, Prox1. So this would be another node or another cluster. Prox1 is what's in Prox cluster, so I'm not going to send it to itself, but let's see if we can send it to Prox2, and let's see what the migrate looks like. So yeah, refusing migration to the same node. So if we were doing to another system there, it's the same thing if I was doing, 2.2, that's my actual Proxmox. So there are, that is a very interesting feature that is easy to use if you have the infrastructure set up for it. But that is about everything. It's kind of a high-level view, as I mentioned here, of everything within Proxmox Datacenter Manager. I am very excited for what's to come with it, what's next. We're also going to throw in a link to the roadmap, the datasheet, everything, which I may have already mentioned. But with that, let's get into the next segment here, and then we'll take things on home. Now, let's talk about the roadmap and where this is kind of all headed in the future, because it is just released. So according to the official roadmap docs, Proxmox isn't done updating yet. Of course, there's going to be deeper integration with Proxmox Backup Server. There is going to be integration with the Proxmox Mail Gateway, as I mentioned before, more advanced migration options, a more fully featured SDN experience within PDM, continued evolution of the Rust/U UI and API-driven automation. So 1.0 is less finished product forever and more of a strong foundation that Proxmox is going to build a lot on top of. If you're already investing in Proxmox VE9 and PBS4, this fits right in with that new generation of that stack. So that's Proxmox Datacenter Manager 1.0, a centralized Rust-powered open source control plane for your Proxmox world. For me, this was kind of the missing piece that finally makes Proxmox feel like a complete ecosystem alternative to the traditional vSphere, vCenter stack, especially if you're running, multiple nodes and kind of have everything all over the place like I do. Now, I want to hear from you. Are you planning on deploying PDM into your home lab? Are you going to hold off for a little bit? Do you not see a point at the moment? Would you run it as dedicated bare metal install or a VM on your cluster or single node? So drop your thoughts on this latest release, your thoughts, horror stories if you know your 2010 Proxmox management down in the comments. If you found this useful, remember to comment, like, and subscribe, because again, about 90% of you aren't subscribed yet, and it really does help us. And that's how we got to 4K subscribers. So again, thank you for that. And head on over to the store.45homelab.com, see everything we've got on offer. Systems like the HL15 2.0, which are perfect for single node or Proxmox clusters, HCI integrating with Ceph, smaller systems, so edge nodes, backup targets, lab experiments. And for folks in the US, we now have financing available, so you can spread out the cost of building a proper home lab instead of doing it all in one hit. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Probably breaking something in Proxmox so you don't have to. 67. I'm too old to do that.